think you just have to do it. It's having something within you to take that first tiny little step towards what it is you want to do.
You do not back yourself by eliminating the doubt. You back yourself by deciding the doubt does not get the final vote. Welcome back to Everyday Conversations, and I'm your host, Amin Mombani. Quick one before we start. If you haven't subscribed it on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you are listening right now, do that because new episodes are dropping every week. And trust me, the lineup is very solid. Something keeps happening with this show that I did not plan for. I started using threads for my podcast show, and I posted something which was not rehearsed actually. And the right people replied. A random post, a connection is made, and now a conversation I genuinely cannot wait to have. She's a creative, always with a project running, spends her days sharing stories from the disability sector, and a podcast host herself. Which means that right now, two people who both know what it feels like to be behind a microphone and wonder if anyone is listening are about to have the most honest conversation they can. She got to where she is, in her own words, by sheer determination, hard work, and not taking no for an answer. And she also wants to speak about imposter syndrome. Kelly Smith, welcome to Everyday Conversations.
Thank you for having me. This is genuinely exciting. And yes, I saw your post on Threads, and I find that Threads it's such a supportive community of people, in particular creative people. And so I've also been getting a good response to my podcast on there. And I saw your post and I thought, this is interesting. I'd like to have a conversation with this guy. And so here we are.
Thank you so much for this. You host your own podcast. So I want to ask you something not many hosts get asked. So when you sit down to record, what is the feeling that comes right before you hit record button?
Nervous, very nervous. So my podcast is called Where Do I Find You? And I had the idea for a very long time, and I had made 2 podcasts previously. I did one where I was interviewing my grandmother with all of her stories across her life, and that was quite fascinating. And then I did another one with a friend, and we didn't really plan for it. We didn't prepare correctly. And so I was lucky enough to go on to 2 other podcasts, 2 very popular Australian podcasts, and I was able to ask questions of the hosts, and they invited me back, and they kept inviting me back. And I thought, this is good. I'm getting all this lovely feedback from people who have their own show. Why don't I try my own? And so I planned for a very long time. Like I would have had about 6 to 12 months of planning to make sure that it wasn't just going to be one-off. And when I had a few already recorded, I thought, okay, now I'll start promoting, now I'll start releasing. Every time I jump on a call, even today, nerves, absolute nerves, because I'm so invested in it and it's so exciting.
That's really great because even I spoke to one of my guests in episode 3. He is also a podcast host for blockchain, DXB, and Bitcoin. So he said something. He said, podcasting is simple if you think, which just consists of 80% of research and 20% of the action.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you do definitely have to research. You have to know a bit about what you're doing. Like, a decent mic, I think, goes a long way because you want people to enjoy listening to the sound quality, I think. But at the same time, I know there's a lot of people that are spending thousands of dollars to hire studios, and unless you're making money, like how are you doing that? So yeah, I think put in the research, but then genuinely be curious about the people that you're talking to. And, I mean, when I sit down with people, they're so gracious about giving me some of their time. And a lot of them, majority of them, they're all really busy. They've all got these other jobs going on. And to have that hour or so with them, yeah, like you've got to put in that effort, but then I think you need to just give a bit of like freedom as well, because generally, like I'm finding there's things that they they want to talk about that they've never spoken about before, or people haven't asked them those questions before. So you need a bit of room for that freedom as well, I think.
That's the thing. Even my podcast show, Everyday Conversations, it's all about what we are having in every day in our life. So it's like real people sharing their real stories and their real talk. So definitely there is somewhere on some point they're sharing something which a normal listener who is having that everyday thing in his life can get benefit of.
Yeah, oh, totally. I mean, my when I listen to podcasts for myself, like quite often I will listen to a podcast at the gym. And what I've found over the course of jumping from different podcasts is that they tend to touch on things that sometimes you'll think maybe it's just me that thinks that, or maybe it's just me that feels that way. Or, for instance, if we look at podcasts that are about mental health concerns, so many people think that it's only them that are feeling that way or experiencing that situation. And so to have something out there that you can tap into for free, where you go, wow, I'm not alone. Somebody else thinks and feels that, or somebody else has gone through that. It's quite reassuring. So I find that it's just this platform that if you tap into the right things, you're going to get a lot back out of it.
And Threads is really a great platform to search for the guests because real people are there on Twitter and Threads. So it really helped me out. Never thought that I would have the guest list like a psychotherapist, a mental health advocate, authors, podcast host. Even I recently did a recording 2 days before. She's a criminal lawyer in United States of America and Florida, and she's a productivity coach as well.
Wow.
So that episode is dropping today only, Sunday
Wow.
today.
And isn't it amazing that you're able, through this platform, we can have conversations with people all around the world? I mean, you and I would not have connected if it weren't for Threads, right? And now here we are, like on opposite sides of the world, having this conversation about how we're both going after the same thing. And I think that, that goes back to the whole concept of you can tune in and realize that you're not alone in what it is that you're wanting to either find out or learn about, or it's a great connector.
Kelly, tell me, how are you doing today and what is going on in your world right now? And how is the weather in Australia?
Well, the weather it's good today. So we're coming out of winter, so it's sunny, which is great. It has been very cold. How am I doing today? Well, it's a Sunday, so I've had a beautiful weekend. I knew that this was coming up to kind of cap off my weekend, so it's been good. But, I think as I said to you in the reason why, I thought it would be good to have a conversation, like, a lot of the time I do have a certain level of anxiety, for instance, that is present. And there's a lot of things that I do to keep that in check. And it's a lot of people have said to me, how is it that in a lot of ways I can have this, anxiety be present and also be quite introverted, yet I can do a podcast and talk about all of that and be really vulnerable about all of that. So it's this, it's quite a, I don't, it's like this double-edged sword almost, that I really want to do something out here, but there's all of this stuff that could potentially hold me back, and it did for a very long time.
Kelly, you wrote in the intake form that you are still learning. I love
Yes.
that. So what are you learning right now specifically?
So many things. Like, I mentioned my grandmother before, so she's 96 years old. And she is somebody who has incredible lessons. And at the moment, she is, carrying herself through the world in quite an incredible way. And I'm learning from her just that, humility and how to conduct yourself and how to endear yourself to others. I'm learning about, what's the correct lighting for podcasts, what's the correct mic. So there's, I think life would be pretty boring if you stopped learning new things.
That is something always will be a discoverable thing, that what would be the lighting for podcast, because in every episode, I'm just trying to change some lighting. Today I put something different here, something different here. So I was putting something in front and then I put in the side and then I put on the diagonal way. So this will be going on.
Yes,
So it
yes, and
happens.
I happened to stumble across a cinematographer's Instagram account, and he put up a reel about lighting and how you can get away with, like, using, you can order some things off Amazon, for instance, and still produce a really good quality lighting effect. So I thought it was so lovely that somebody that was so invested was then just taking the time to make a reel so that smaller creators would learn a few things about how to use lights correctly. So I'll flick you that account so you can see what the setup looks like for good lighting.
True. If you see my first two episodes, those were on a different side of wall. I invested something behind the wall and all that, but the lighting was not good. And I was just doing on the webcam of my laptop. So it was totally shattered, but still the content was good, which I'm proud of. The guests were having a really good background. One was a executive leadership coach and one was uh, a coach for women's health and hormones. So that was really good episodes, but the lighting was totally out of my control. But yes, after those two episodes, I invested something in the lights and my camera is perfectly working now, connected with Riverside. So I'm happy that the result is good.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the thing, as you said before, that don't let any of that stop you. So one of the biggest things that I did take on board, and it's from a podcast that I listen to a few times a week, and the main concept was, if you wait until you're ready, then you'll never do it. So you need to do it while you're scared. And so that was a really big part of me saying, you know what, this is something that I really want to do, and I can keep talking about it, and I can keep telling all of the people in my life that, one day I want to do a podcast, I want to do my own, or I could just do it. And yeah, it'll be awful because I don't know what I'm doing, but I'll still be doing it. I'll be doing more than just talking about it.
It feels proud actually that yes, we have our own podcast. Even if one listeners can change their life and some get some takeaway from this conversation, that's my goal. I'm happy with that.
Yeah, yeah. So, if I can ask you a question, then what was the biggest driving force in you starting your own?
That is the biggest problem that I don't want to take interviews for the podcast host because they start asking the questions. My first guest was a podcast host.
Yeah.
Third guest was a podcast host. So I was like, okay. I wanted to start the podcast since last 2 years.
Okay.
My first guest was my mentor, Samir GP, and he's a conversationalist. I listen to him always. I look up at him, how he is listening to people, conversing people. That that was the thing which put me out to okay. I need to start my own podcast show. I need to converse with people. I need to listen to stories. I love listening to people. I'm a good listener. And he commented that as well in the end of the podcast. So that gives me a chance to be on a continued effort on this. And I'm happy to start a podcast which changing people's life. I have been through thick and thins. I've looked up ups and downs in the life. And I know if I'm sharing my stories to people and if someone is also sharing their stories, there is something life changing moment for someone who is relatable to that. My previous guest, one of the guests who speak on mental health was he's an Uber driver. He's not a mental health advocate with the certification, but he's on his own. He has struggled to that. He was in a psychic ward for 6 years. So he has changed his life through that. And he, behind the wheels, whoever comes and takes a ride in his drive, he speaks to them. They open up to him. He suggests them something. He advises them something. And that was the motive I spoke in that podcast as well. People are not asking you for something. They are just asking you to sit with them for a while, listen what they want to tell you. Maybe you can change their life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, for someone who has been in a psych ward, for instance, they've done the work. And, personally, I've seen a psychologist for the past 16 years and it's life changing. And I know that there's people that who are in my life that they talk to me about that, and they know that from my experience being so positive, that it's then given them I guess, the strength to go and talk to people themselves. And this was exactly what I started out doing when I put my hand up to be on somebody else's podcast. It was to talk about things like that. And you're right, like a lot of people just they want that opportunity to be heard. And I think when you're doing it in this situation, we've got a purpose to the conversation, and so it's quite easy to get into a deep conversation quicker than you would ordinarily. So it breaks down those barriers. And I think, a friend just yesterday, actually, he said to me that he's never really been keen on podcasts for some reason. He's never listened to them. And to support me, he listened to one of mine, and he said, well, it's changed my mind. Like, I realized that there's information in there that might be useful to me. And that was the best comment that anyone could give me about it, that it's been of benefit to them.
The only thing is that we need to step out of our comfort zone. If we are living in
Yes.
the comfort zone, if we are living in that cage we build, we can never do anything. Because I was creating contents for my gym, for my running, and I was keep giving an excuse to myself that I don't need to speak in front of the camera because my whole content is about the movement. But I was wrong actually. If I speak, I would have engaged more people on that. But when I came on the podcast, I showed my face, I spoke up in the camera. I was nervous. I am nervous. I will be nervous for few more episodes. I know that.
I think so. And I think being brave enough to put your voice and your face to it, like, that was a thing for me. I was very happy to put my voice to it, because it wasn't about me. It's not about me. It's about the people that I'm talking to. They're the ones that have either the skills or the story, or they're the subject matter experts in what we're talking about. And the first episode I recorded over Zoom, and I hadn't planned on using the video. So, the lighting was not great. I was, certainly not looking my best. And then I realized that if I wanted anyone to actually pay attention to it, well, you've got to put it on socials and give it that push. And the way to get it over the line is for people to actually see that conversation as well as hear it. And from then I was like, okay, well, I'm going to have to put myself in the video. And in an episode that came out a few weeks ago, I was talking to this guy, Nathan, who has over 750,000 followers. And off camera, he said to me, oh, are you using video for this? And I said, no, I'm too nervous to do that. I don't want to put my face to it. And he said, well, maybe you could try this, or maybe you could try that. And so I did, and I thought, do you know what? If I want for this to be something, if I want for this to be successful, then I need to really invest all of myself in it. And if I'm brave enough to be talking about all of the things that I'm talking about, then at least show my face as well. The people that know me know what I look like. So what am I hiding from? And then I realized probably, so the first couple of weeks I was like, okay, well, I'll have to get, the video that looks like this, and then think about how I'm going to put that out there. And oh my goodness, people are going to see me again, and that's so nerve-wracking. And then a few weeks ago, I was planning out, the socials for the week, and I realized for the first time that I wasn't nervous about it. And so because I'd been doing it for a few times, the nerves weren't as bad. So I'm slowly getting over it, I think.
Kelly, that matters a lot. Even if you're posting your guest story or a reel on your Instagram or social, and if you're putting yours, you will get 10x more views or likes or comments rather than you're putting your guest who has a very big content. The thing is, if you show yourself, the thing matters.
Yeah, and that's what I'm realizing, that if I'm trying to convince people that it's important enough to me, then I need to at least put myself out there in order to convince them that it should be important to them. And it's again that it's that investment. But then there's a few things at the moment where people are debating whether or not should podcasts be video or audio only. And I think, yeah, when you're promoting it, absolutely put some clips out there to show people what you look like, what your guest looks like. But in terms of the whole episode, I'm still very much audio only. I want to listen to a podcast when I'm walking, when I'm at the gym, when I'm driving. If I want to sit down and watch an interview, then that's something different in my mind.
That's great. Kelly, you describe yourself as a creative at heart, always with a project on the go. What does that actually look like day to day? And what is the current project you're handling it?
What does that look like day to day? So, I mean, I work in marketing, so thankfully, my day-to-day job is quite creative. So, for instance, last week I spent a whole day doing video editing. So there's that outlet. But personally, I mean, there's the podcast. I'm getting a lot out of that. I write, so I write every day, and that's a form of journaling. But way back when, I thought I was going to be a scriptwriter. So I went and I studied writing, in particular screenwriting, and I got to work on a few TV shows, and that was great. And then, yeah, there's always something. I've studied graphic design. I'm always taking photos. There's just always something on the go. But probably, yeah, at the moment, the focus is the podcast because it's it's so much more than being creative. Like there's the planning, there's being a bit strategic about when to release and how to release and, what is it that people might get out of it, and then, writing up all of the captions and everything. So that's the biggest focus at the moment.
So I'll go back to the previous question again. You are creative. You do photography. You are into cameras. You are into writing. What did you start your podcast so long?
Why did it take so long?
Why did it take so long to start a podcast? Because you have all those things which one podcast producer is trying to find.
I was scared. I was so scared to put myself out there. And that's where, I said there's imposter syndrome. Like, one of the first things I put on Threads was that I'm quite proud. I've recorded my first episode. I know there's millions of podcasts out there, and this, it probably won't even get listened to by anyone, but I'm doing it for me. And somebody responded and said, there's millions of books in the world, and no one is ever going to say no to another one. And I thought, okay, well, it's a different perspective. But yeah, it took so long because I was terrified of putting myself out there.
My first episode was about the same thing. In my first episode, I told about my mentor, my guest. He asked me one question and I was blank. He said, Amin, why you are doing the podcast when there are millions of kings and queens in the podcast industry? Why will someone listen to you? I was blank. Then he asked me another question again within seconds. He said, why you're blank? You know the answer. The answer is within you. I told him, I said, sir, when you ask me something, or even if you ask to someone, you always make them blank. His aura is like that. He's a very great coach. But then he told me that he said the answer is within you only. And then I said, okay, fine. And that's why I'm here recording number of episodes right now, posting, scheduling, everything. It's good.
Yeah, yeah. And I think yeah, I mean, for me, it was absolutely just being scared of not having anything to talk about or anything to say. And so, because I'd tried it before, um, and the last one that I worked on, there was 3 episodes, and I think that the content that was in those episodes was really good, but we didn't really plan for how to get it out there. We didn't really plan for anything else. And so my partner actually said to me, before you go releasing anything with this new one, make sure you've got at least 6 recorded and then release them over coming weeks. And then when you're releasing those, you can use those to get new guests.
That's
And so
amazing.
that's what I've done. And that has been, I think, the key to this still going. And, I think you're probably aware that, like, what is it, 80 or 90% of podcasts don't make it past episode 10. So because I'm just so determined and so stubborn, I was like, I'm getting past episode 10. I don't care if it's just to 11, I'm getting past episode 10. And so I've recorded 10 episodes and I've got 5 more lined up at the moment, and there'll be more coming from that. So, and so many of those is from Threads. Like, the community there is so incredible.
Great. You got here by sheer determination and not taking no for an answer. I love this sentence actually. It's very beautiful. But I wanted the story behind it. What was the thing that you refused to accept? Or did you say no for something?
Um, so I remember being in high school, and the school that I went to, like, it wasn't in a great area. It wasn't known for being um, academic successfully. So um, I remember I was midway through high school, and we were talking in a group about, what we were going to do after school. And I said, no, I can't imagine I'm going to have kids straight out of school. I'm going to have a career. That's what I'll do. I'll have a career. And the comment was, you think you'll have a career. And I thought, oh, okay, that's full of doubt. Let me prove that person wrong. And I think that was just enough. Like, comments like that across my life, where it's been kind of, well, you've come from this place, so you, how on earth do you think you're going to get anywhere else, kind of thing. So I always worked really hard. I was always really determined that I wanted to, like, specifically go to university. So in that regard, I pushed myself to do that, and I ended up going to university twice. um, and yeah, I think it was just seeing people that, like, either I grew up with or went to school with, what they were and weren't doing with their lives, and knowing that I wanted something different, and then just figuring out how to get that something different.
And you're working in a marketing sector, marketing in a disability sector, right?
Yeah, so the interesting thing is that I've worked in the disability sector for 25 years, across different roles. My dad worked in the same sector, so I've been around people with disability my entire life. Um, and then with everything I've studied, it all kind of has fallen into marketing. And it's, yeah, as I said before, I spent a whole day, well, 2 days actually. One was shooting, one was editing, and then there was the release. So I get to do all of these really creative processes and bring that to the people that, that are using the services. And I find it really rewarding.
So what is the most powerful story you have been trusted to tell about this disability sector without naming anyone that changed how you see the world?
I think so. We've just recently worked on, like, a mid-year campaign where we spoke to a lot of families, and yeah, I think, and this is all, it's all out in the public, so I'm fine to talk about it. But it was very much just, as much as I've worked there for 25 years and I know these people and I know stories, I think the most powerful thing is being trusted to tell those stories. So when a parent is comfortable enough to speak to you and discuss things like their concerns, their worries for their child, that's powerful. And being able to tell that story and share that with people so that they understand, uh, that's probably the most powerful and rewarding part of it.
Let's come to your podcast. You host Where Do I Found You? What is
Yes, I do.
what is the basic behind this, like this name, Where Do I Found You?
Um, I wanted to have, in all honesty, I wanted to have a bit of a hook. So I opened the podcast by asking the person, "Where do I find you?" And it's very open. So some people have said, I'm in my lounge room. Other people have said, I am, during a career change, I am doing this, I'm doing that. And then I close the show by asking, "Where will I find you in 12 months' time?" Because it's about their journey, it's about their story. And so the two previous podcasts that I was invited on to ask questions, they gave me the feedback that, um, I'm a good listener and I'm really good at asking these questions of people. So I thought, well, if that's the case, then, and these are two people who are mentors of mine. I respect them. Like, I just have the utmost respect for them, and they are so good at what they do. And I thought, if they believe in me, then maybe I should believe in myself and try this. And so I thought, what can I do? How can I frame it so that it's about talking to people about where they are in their lives and what they're doing? Um, and so I thought it was just an open-ended question. Where do I find you? And it's worked. It's worked quite well so far.
Definitely, I'll be putting down your podcast details in the show notes below so people can
Thanks.
search you out there and people can listen and take advantage of that.
Great.
Kelly, you said imposter syndrome, the most you are ready to talk about, honestly about. So let's go there properly, not the definition, but when does it show up for you? And in what specific situation does that voice get the loudest?
Oh, situations like this for sure. I mean, even I said, whenever I record or whenever I talk to somebody on a podcast, like there's nerves, but I think there's also, why me? Why would anyone stop and take the time to listen to me? Because I'm not an expert in anything. I'm not skilled in anything. So why would they trust what it is that I'm saying and sharing? Um, it shows up at work all of the time. You only have to go online to see that so many people are highly skilled in marketing. And I look at what I'm doing and I'm like, oh, maybe I'm not the best person. Maybe I'm not doing it right. Maybe I'm not doing it good enough. So that's the voice that is the loudest, the one that is like, you're not good enough. You're not doing it right. Somebody else could do it better than you. And it's, I think it's something that unfortunately will always be there. It's just my personality, and it's kind of it's best friends with anxiety, I think, because you've got both of those. There's one that's one that's the overthinker, and then one that's the negative thoughts, and then the self-doubt comes in, and it's like, oh, that's a cocktail of negativity, and so there's a constant battle against that. And doing the podcast, it's almost like it's exercising a certain muscle that hopefully will wear all of that negativity down.
Kelly, what is most fascinating about you that you are a podcast host, you work in a marketing for disability sector, you always be creating, you push yourself out of comfort zone all the time, and you still battle the imposter syndrome. So does the doing ever make it go away, or does it just change the what you feel like an imposter about?
Yeah, that's a really interesting way of framing that. I think the more I do something, the less the imposter syndrome is there, the less negativity and negative self-talk is there. So the more that the more that I work on certain campaigns at work, the more that I present my work, that it lessens. The more that I interview people, talk to people, the nerves, that kind of goes away. So I think you're right in that it just kind of shifts. And given that I'm constantly pushing myself to learn new things, um, I think that's kind of giving it space to kind of creep back in as well, because, when you're learning something new, you're starting at zero. And so there is always that doubt, and it's not wanting to be the best at anything. It's just wanting to get better at things. So yeah, I think that's a good way of explaining it. It moves from certain areas, but then it shows up in other places.
Kelly, what would you say to a person who is listening right now, who has an idea, a podcast, and business creative project that have been sitting on because they do not feel qualified enough, experienced enough, or ready enough? What do you say to them?
Uh, Look, I don't. From my experience, I think you just have to do it. It's one foot in front of the other, and if it's just taking a moment to put one sentence, like probably the safest thing I would say, put one sentence on Threads. It's a sentence. You can throw it out there. You don't have to show your face. You don't have to put your voice out there. It's not a video. It's very safe. You could do that. You could start there. And then, yeah, I think it's being brave enough to put yourself out there. And then it becomes quite surprising to see where the support comes from. And sometimes you need that, not that you shouldn't be doing things just to get a pat on the back, right? But I think there is it's very important for at least one person to say, hey, I think that's a good idea, or hey, I think you'll be good at that. Sometimes that's enough to give you the drive to go forward.
You wrote something on your form that I want to pull out. You said, if you back yourself, you can achieve more than you think. That sounds simple, but I do not think it is what does backing yourself actually require. In practice, on the days when backing yourself feels impossible sometimes. And I also totally agree with, if you back yourself, you can achieve many things. You can achieve success, importance, many things. So what do you think about this?
Yeah, I think for me personally, there's definitely something within me that won't let me settle until I feel like I've achieved what I've set out to achieve. And I think that's kind of equal parts determination and just being stubborn. And I like to see something like form of output for what it is that I've been working on or thinking about, rather than just, you know, I I would rather be a doer than a talker, which is, it's strange to say that, considering, here we are talking, but it's the doing, right? Um, I think, yeah, look, and it's really, really hard, particularly if you do have self-doubt. But I would like to think that most people have at least something within themselves that they know to be true, and they, even if it's just, it could be one day I think I'm going to run 5Ks, or I'd like to run 5Ks. And so they start off by taking a walk around the block. Like, it's having something within you to take that first tiny little step towards what it is you want to do. And then I think, for me, I've found that from those tiny steps, you start getting momentum. And the belief in what you're doing, it doesn't rely anymore on the external validation. You can just keep going because, doing it for yourself is enough. So that's why I kind of think that, like, if I didn't back myself with this, if I was relying 100% on what other people were saying, then I wouldn't still be doing it. I'd probably be, still doubting myself and still thinking, no one's going to care. So yeah, I think you need to believe in yourself.
You said you're comfortable discussing failures and setbacks.
Yeah.
Tell me about one that nobody knows about you. Something that did not make it onto your highlights, or something that taught you something that success can never could.
Something. So I mentioned before that very early on, I was studying screenwriting, and I'm talking, I was like 18, 19, and I was convinced that that was going to be my life. That was going to be my career. And I luckily got to go and work on two of the biggest shows in Australia. And I thought, great, this is it. Like this is the dream right here. I'm going to work on a TV show and I'll do that forever. And it didn't happen. I I was so young. I didn't have any stories to tell. Um, they said, look, yeah, you can write. There's no doubt about that, but you've got nothing to write about. And we, for a TV show, they need viewers, they need stories. Was it a failure? I don't think it was a failure. I think, like, my kind of motto, and this is what I've learned from one of my mentors, is that if something doesn't turn out the way that you want it to, but you've still learnt from that experience, then it's not a failure because you've still learnt something. You might not have the desired outcome or the outcome that you thought you were going to get, but if you can learn from it, if you can grow from it, then it's not a failure. It's just didn't work how you thought it would.
You said you want the listener to not feel alone. That is a very beautiful intention. When when have you felt alone most in your journey, and what you got through it?
Probably very early on, when like I had a lot of anxiety, like, so I'm talking probably 15, 20 years ago. And it was very much before mental health was such an open topic to discuss. And I didn't know what it was. I didn't know why I was reacting the way that I was. I didn't know why, there were things that were holding me back. And so I eventually started seeing a psychologist, and that was the biggest turning point. But then I also discovered a podcast, of all things, where the host was incredibly open about mental health. And it was the first time that, yeah, you can go and see a psychologist and you know what their job is, and you know that they are there to support you, to help you, to give you the tools to get through whatever it is you're managing. But to hear it for the first time from someone who, I didn't know this person, and they were so willing to share their journey, to share what they'd been through, how they got through it, and how they were now thriving. It just gave me so much hope. Um, and yeah, that was a moment where I thought, okay, well, certainly not alone. There's other people out there. And then from that, he then started inviting people on his show that had similar stories. And I was like, wow, there's so many other people out there that are going through this. That reduced the loneliness.
Who is Kelly in the quiet when there is nothing to being created? There is no project, no mic, no output. Who is Kelly?
Um, Good question. Right, that's a deep question. Who am I when I'm not creating anything? Look, you're gonna find me like just mindlessly scrolling on Instagram, to be honest. Like, it's I spend way too much time on my phone. Or actually no, I really enjoy walking. So I will walk every single day. I find that it's a good way of just, like, I go every day after work and it just kind of shakes off the work day. Um yeah, I think, I don't know. I don't really separate who I am without being creative. I've never been asked that before. That's a very good question.
Thank you. Can I have to bring this up right now? It's a wildcard question. You told me it's a family joke. Numbers. So a,
Yes.
so a creative who markets podcasts, tells stories, always has a project running, and numbers are a complete disaster. Give me the most
Yes.
recent example, something specific, because I feel like there is a story there. There is something.
It's it's not how my brain works. It really isn't. So numbers just baffle me. They're it's quite fascinating because I love data. I love seeing, how is a campaign doing? How are the socials running? Show me all of the charts and all of the graphs and all of that kind of stuff. But pure kind of mathematical situations, I'm turning to my calculator, and even then I can get things wrong. Like I was with my manager and had to support something with a budget spreadsheet, and she was like, this doesn't work, right? And I'm like, no, I didn't realize that, but it's this blind spot. Yeah, numbers, they're not my friend.
Why is it like that?
I'm really not sure. Yeah, I'm really not sure. Like very early on, like primary school and things like that, I was always so focused on English or art and, basic maths. Sure, I can do that. I remember probably from about mid primary school onwards, numbers just they didn't interest me. And so I think because of that, I didn't put in the effort to learn. I was, running off to read another book or to write another story or draw another picture. I didn't have time for them.
This is the person who backs herself. I love it.
Yes, indeed. I mean, look, we've all got calculators in our phones now, so we're fine, we're good. But yeah, I think it's just potentially lack of interest. I've never really delved into it. So again, another really interesting question.
A creative who battles imposter syndrome and creates anyway. A podcast host who wonders if anyone is listening and keeps recording anyway. A marketer who spends her days making sure the stories that most people never hear get told anyway. That word anyway is the entire Kelly Smith story. The doubt was there, she did it anyway. No was there, she pushed away. The imposter voice was there, she hit record anyway. And I think that this is the thing worth carrying from this conversation. You do not back yourself by eliminating the doubt. You back yourself by deciding the doubt does not get the final vote. And Kelly, thank you for the threads reply that started all this. Thank you for being honest about the imposter that live alongside the creator. And thank you for reminding every single person listening that not feeling alone starts with someone being brave enough to say, even me too. Thank you so much for giving me your time and having over here on the Everyday Conversations.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for putting it out there.
All of Kelly's details, including where they have found you podcast, are in the show notes below. We'll see you guys in the next episode of Everyday Conversations. Till then, goodbye.